Hey guys, Sun here. I'm a privacy and security researcher, and you're watching The Privacy Guides. Today's episode is about exploring the password policy rabbit hole. I will be breaking down that story I published on my website about password policies, which actually spawned a whole thing between me and the moderators of the privacy subreddit. If you don't know what I'm talking about, I'll link to it in the description. To everyone who supported me throughout this, thank you so much. It was quite frightening, intense. This whole thing was also a very interesting learning experience. So yeah, thanks so much for your support, and thanks so much to everyone who has participated in the conversation, keeping it healthy. Some of you were, supporting the mod's perspective. Some of you were supporting my perspective. That whole conversation was a fabulous example of freedom of speech. Thank you to everyone who participated. So yeah, having a look at this paper. So as some of you may know by now, I started working on the security team at Trust Token, and I reached out to my team and said, hey, can I share some of this research with the people on the privacy guides? And I was really, really happy when I got their support. So essentially, this episode is supported by Trust Token, not because they're directly funding it, but because they're allowing me to do my work at Trust Token and then share some of our findings with you guys. And that is such an amazing way of having this Privacy Guides project stay authentic and keep on growing while me being able to pay the rent without being after everyone for donations or whatever. It's a way for this to be sustainable. And I'm so blessed that this opportunity has revealed itself. As any enterprise organization, as all organizations, we are, trying to be as secure as possible while promoting productivity. And it's quite an interesting rabbit hole where, we could definitely go batshit crazy on security and have massively secure passwords, but then why? Is it really necessary? So there are a few common misconceptions about passwords, and I've listed a few. If you know about more, please drop them in the comments and we'll, have a conversation around those as well. But one of them is using a 5-word passphrase is less secure than an 8-character password. So the typical 8-character random alphanumerical with numbers, letters, small and large letters actually, and special characters. Someone, or a lot of us, and including myself actually, thought that was necessarily more secure than a 5-word passphrase, especially when coming from a set of words that is known by everyone, such as the EFF short word list number 1. Interestingly enough, it isn't. Choosing a 5-word passphrase from that list is actually more secure. It has more entropy, and we're going to be talking about entropy throughout this series. Another one is using an 8-character password is never secure enough. That is definitely something that I thought and that I actually mentioned on the privacy guides a few times. Now, for many, many use cases, this is totally true, but it isn't always true. So for instance, if one is securing our Mac or one is securing our OnePassword, database of passwords, both these vendors use key derivation to convert our password to a hash that can also, in certain use cases, be used as an encryption key. Now, the key derivation process can be really shitty if it's badly implemented, or incredibly robust if it's very well implemented. In the context of macOS and OnePassword, it uses PBKDF2. I always have a hard time saying this, damn it, but you get the point. It uses a key derivation algorithm that uses a concept called iterations to essentially make it very long to compute that hash or key. And in the context of Mac, at least on Catalina and Big Sur, I've tested both, it uses a number of iterations that is usually way over 25,000. And using the strongest computer that one can rent on AWS that's designed for AI, machine learning, stuff like this, it would cost at discounted spot pricing over $3 million to crack one of those passwords, and take a huge amount of time unless it's done in parallel, which is possible. More on this in a future episode. So on a computer, if one is not a whistleblower or one doesn't have an enormous amount of Bitcoin, for instance, being targeted, using an 8-character password, if truly random, more on this later in the series, is way secure enough for most use cases. Now, another misconception is one should never use same password to unlock computer and password manager, for instance. So this can be extrapolated to like using the same password for more than one thing. Well, as we go down that, password policy rabbit hole, it's possible to discover use cases where it's totally fine to use the same one twice. So in the context of Mac and OnePassword, it is. OnePassword uses the secure remote password protocol, I think, SRP, and it's a way for us to never actually send our credentials over the internet. So all of that encryption is done locally, and it's a great example of why using the same password for both computer and OnePassword is totally fine, because they're both in the same user space, meaning that if someone was to have a keylogger, they could clearly compromise both. So if they're different, it's just 2 passwords instead of 1 to exfiltrate. It's a little more work, but it's definitely not a massive amount more work. Now, while I'm talking about OnePassword, a lot of you have been mentioning that OnePassword 8 is removing support for local vaults, which blew my mind, to be honest. I didn't think that was on their roadmap. So I did reach out to the media side of things at OnePassword. Hopefully I'll hear back from them. And I will share my thoughts a little later on the privacy guides as I've researched this. Okay, now another misconception is one should rotate passwords as often as possible. That is one that a lot of people are spreading in the enterprise world. Well, it actually is most likely less secure to implement password rotations unless a password has been compromised, because humans are really bad at generating and memorizing passwords. So not only will humans generate shitty passwords when asked to create them over and over every quarter, for instance, but IT help desk will get a whole bunch more requests because they're locked out of their computers and stuff, which also usually means that help desk will create a honeypot to have a way of restoring anyone's credentials, which is not always secure. Again, it really depends on the threat model. So that's kind of it for today's episode. We are going to go down the whole rabbit hole. I'll be talking about password entropy. I'm going to be talking about hardware random number generators, key derivation functions, and secure elements. And then we're going to be talking about threat modeling and a few recommendations. So this is really a small series on passwords. I hope you're going to enjoy it. And I hope it's going to be insightful. I know for me it was. I initially approached passwords kind of like all passwords should be the same. Like all passwords should be subject to the same password policy. So if it's like a 28-character long password policy, that applies to everything. Well, what I discovered throughout this research is it really depends on the use case. Now, for one person interacting with their own passwords, it's not such a big deal, but I think this research will be especially interesting to people that are managing a whole bunch of computers. So I'll see you soon in next episode. Next episode, we're going to be talking about password entropy. So stay tuned. Bye.